So who's in, who's out? Probably a way too early look at potentially the Saints 53-man roster. We'll go ahead and take a shot anyway. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So I went ahead and took a shot at trying to kind of figure out the 53-man roster a little over 24 hours before they play their first preseason game. Couple caveats. You'll notice I'm starting off with a specialist and I'm including Taysom Hill there. I'll explain why in a second. Um, the other thing is Justin Simmons, if he were to sign fairly soon with the Saints, it's kind of a game changer on the defensive side because I feel pretty confident about what's going on with the defense for the most part. I think you can more or less have a pretty good idea of who's making the team on that side of the ball. Offense is tough, really tough, and we're going to start with them. Just to break it down, so I'm considering Taysom a specialist, so we 4 specialists instead of the normal 3. And in my breakdown, I'm looking at 25 offensive players, 24 defensive players, plus 4 specialists to get to 53. Keeping in mind that Taysom can be in any of the rooms except offensive line, and even then, I'm not so sure he's not our backup left tackle. So I'm not including Taysom in the numbers, trying to figure out who's making it per room. So that's why I just went ahead and threw him with the specialist there. In the easy room, I think on the offense, the only really easy room is quarterbacks. Carr's a starter. Hayner and Rattler are gonna bang it out for the backup job. I think they're solid here. I don't think they have any particular worries um, about their quarterback room. That they'll figure out who the number 2 and the number 3 is, and by the time we kick off the first game, and I expect them to keep developing and getting better and be able to push. Yeah, said it in the video the other day. It may not be in a few weeks or a few months. It may be next year, but at some point push to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Very solid room. They're taking 3 and they're taking all 3 of these guys, obviously. Yeah, and here's where it starts getting interesting. I'm considering running back room of 4, including the fullback, which is probably at this point Adam Prentice, I'm pretty sure. Kamara and Williams are going to make it, I think. The real issue here is I think Kendre Miller would not only make it, but he would likely be pushing for the primary backup behind Alvin, which would then put everything in an interesting conversation. Would it be Jamal Williams as the third guy and Mims not having a shot, or could Mims challenge Williams at that point? So I think Mims is of all the backups, he seems to be making the strongest case so far in training camp about making this roster. So you can't totally discount him. So not really sure how this is going to shake out. If they're keeping 4, assuming they are, this 3 would just be a little light, even with Taysom helping out in this room. So I'm thinking 4 is the number. Don't quite think they can get to 5 because Taysom will be helping out in this room, both at running back and at fullback. So far, kind of a toss up here because Miller just can't get on the field. He just July 24th is when he went to the trainer's room. We're August 9th, and we still haven't seen him come back yet. So if this keeps lingering, Mims keeps showing out, could get really, really interesting on that last spot in the running back room. And here's definitely another room that's getting completely affected by injury and guys just not being in practice. And in some cases, barely at practice, much like we were talking about Kendre Miller in the previous segment on running backs. I'm thinking they got to take 6. And Olave, Shaheed, Perry, and Cedric Wilson Jr., they're golden. They're good. I know they were pushing Perry to do more. He seemed to respond on that. I don't think his job was ever seriously or his spot was ever seriously in jeopardy. It could have been had he not responded, but he seems to have got the message when DA was talking about we need to see a bigger jump. Started stacking up some very good days in training camp. And it might have been a case too. It just took him a little while to get acclimated to the new offense. I think there are a lot of players that fall in this category, but we're 2 to 3 weeks in, getting ready to play our first preseason game. So, yeah, that I don't know, that excuse still holds as much water now. Going, you got to get it because now you got to go out there and show it. It gets interesting after that. Tipton is show. He's the guy out of that next group, Mason Tipton, that continually keeps making plays, keeps turning heads, keeps popping eyes. Everybody's talking about the young man, and we know he's fast as heck. He's started showing. I think at times he's got the route tree. He can run routes. He can do a lot of things. And then he hurt a hammy, and he's been on the shelf the last few practices, which is going to hurt him. Bub Means has been all in the trainer's room almost as long as Kendre Miller has. Haven't seen much there. Equanimous St. Brown, who I always kind of thought was a long shot at making this team, to be honest, unless they specifically wanted him for special teams and blocking. But I'm going, I don't know if they would have held back a roster spot, wide receiver spot for just that, but it was possible. Um, and Morgan Jr., I don't think really has much of a shot of making this team. But Austin Jr. and Callaway are healthy, so they've got to be in the mix because they're out there practicing every day, and they're going to get a lot of playing time tomorrow night in Arizona. And Nakua's, you know, um, he's hanging in there too. I mean, and he's a bigger bodied receiver, so he may end up stealing a roster spot almost by default right now, unless these guys start getting healthy and showing up and showing out. For all intents and purposes. Um, Yesterday with the twos and threes, Nakua was one of the ones that got the big bump, saying, "Hey, he was working well with Hayner and Rattler down there." So those last two spots is talk about the bubble. The bubble's huge there. There's a lot of guys that going to be fighting over potentially those last two, assuming they're keeping six. It could be five, but I kind of feel like it's going to be six. I think you're going to get some of the return guys from this group and some of the special team help from this group, which also plays into that because some of those guys may have to run down and cover some punts and kicks this year. Oh, let's talk about the big headache in the room when you're trying to dally around a 53-man roster. Um, Flaga, Lucas Patrick, Eric McCoy, 100% confident all three of them are making it. Cesar Ruiz is 99.999% confidence, and I think we could probably go ahead and bump that up to 100. He's on the team. So we got 4 of our 9, and it starts getting real shaky after that. We have a lot of linemen in camp, but some of the recent additions that we've been bringing in, and honestly, I have a hard time remembering their names, and you're not really hearing much about them at all. Um, the ones that they're talking about is not always good news. Penning had a bad day yesterday, hoping that's all it was, hoping he really shows out tomorrow night in Arizona. He needs to. Um, Landon Young's been around a while for the Saints. Previous staff was very, very high on his abilities and what they thought that they could develop him into. He's still sticking around. He's actually the primary backup to Fuaga. But the 2 tackles have not really excited anybody when they've come up in conversation about training camp. And Oliuta is one of those, was backing up a little bit at right tackle behind Penning, plus playing some left guard. And veteran guy, I think they were expecting more out of him, more like they're getting from Lucas Patrick. And so far, I don't necessarily know that it's there, that anybody's really seeing it. Nick Saldivaris would have every opportunity of making this team and becoming a starter. This gets interesting in the conversation that we're about ready to have, but again, in the training room, can't get healthy. Shane Lemieux or Lemo, um, also spent a little time in the training room, came out, and it looks like he's running with the 3 team, the number 3s. Um, Kyle Hergel's an undrafted free agent who he's been turning some heads and making some noise, um, in training camp, and he may sneak up this roster just by virtue of the fact that the guys right above him are either kinda injury issued or just not necessarily playing as well as was expected that they were gonna play in training camp. So he could sneak in here. The biggest issue on this is if you're starting Lucas Patrick at left guard, and it's looking more and more like that's where he's going to be. He's also your primary backup to McCoy, which means you almost need two starting left guards in case of an emergency, so to speak. Um, Said Oliuta's been working there, and he did not have a good day at left guard yesterday. Saldivari, if he gets healthy, maybe he's the guy, or maybe Hergel sneaks into it. But Oliuta's real spot on this team, he was supposed to be able to play multiple spots. So you could be a little more versatile. And we've got a backup guard and backup tackle. Again, not really hearing a whole lot of it. So this is shaky. So I'm kind of penciling in pinning Young and Uda right now, which gets us to 7. So then you're looking at the bubble right there of 2 of the remaining 3, or somebody coming finally up from that group that mostly we just added within the last 7 days, and maybe they show out tomorrow. I think tomorrow night, the most important thing we're probably going to be looking at is how this offensive line, whoever plays, we don't know who's starting and who's not yet, but whoever gets out there on the from that pinning on down group has to get in the game and has to play well and really start solidifying this. Um, it could be a problem. And it's a problem we don't want to have. We don't even want to talk about, and it will show itself one way or the other because you're playing within the next 7 days. Because you're playing, I should say, the next 9 days. You're playing a game tomorrow against Arizona. Then you got Frisco coming in, and then you're playing Frisco next Sunday night. So the blemishes and the warts and everything will definitely start showing up. Probably starting tomorrow night, working into next weekend. And talk about tight ends. Juwan Johnson, once he gets healthy, and Foster Moreau are going to make the team. Um, the interesting conversation comes in with Dallin Hoker and Michael Jacobson. Um, I don't remember which way they had him listed on the depth chart. I would assume Hoker's probably ahead, but Jacobson he's a big old boy that looks like he can catch the ball and do some damage in the passing game, especially in the red zone. You can't keep 4 tight ends, but I'm looking at this going, Foster Moreau, I don't know. You kind of have to keep him because he's going to provide probably a lot of your blocking and a little bit in the passing game. He won't kill you in that. So this is a tough one, very tough. So I interested to see how it shakes out. Who wins that job? I think it's going to be Hoker, but I don't think you can discount Jacobson, and I think they could probably find a way to use him. So we'll see how this turns out. Now, it starts getting a little easier once you get to the defensive side. I think more and more of this is chiseled in stone about what they're gonna do at these spots. Um, Defensive line, I don't see how this changes a whole lot from what you're looking at. Grandison, Young, Foskey has been playing very well so far in training camp. Jordan and Turner, Jordan's not going anywhere. Peyton Turner so far has stayed healthy, knock on wood, and has played pretty good. He's had some big days that they talked about. I don't think he's had anything really awful going on, and he's going to be that solid uh, backup guy on the defensive line who has the ability to play both outside and some inside. So I think as long as he stays healthy, I think he's the fifth edge guy and kind of taking that to no passing out role right now with him with passing out still injured. Saunders, Shepard, Brzee, and Boyd, I think, are the four guys on the inside. I think that's pretty much a done deal. The only really interior guy that we've heard anything from is Kendall Vickers a couple of times. Um, I don't remember what his status is as far as years in the league because I think he's been in for a couple of years. It'd be nice if he'd be a guy you could throw in the practice squad um, as the fifth guy in case you need him, but hopefully you won't. The top four will be good enough and be healthy enough to handle everything on the interior this year. And then you linebacker, easy call on the first three. They're all in. Demario Davis, Pete Werner, Willie Gay. I'm thinking they're going to keep six, maybe five, but I'm thinking six. Um, I think Anthony Orgy has, as of right now, grabbed the fourth spot. He's played very well. All camp, it sounds like. They're very impressed. DA's been asked about him several times, spoke, you know, kind of impressed about his athletic ability, and now he's kind of learning everything and putting it all together, out there making plays. The big thing is, he mentioned once that Orgy has worked at all three spots in the line with the linebackers. He's worked middle, he's worked weak, he's worked Sam. So the versatility at backing up there, young guy with some athletic ability that's turning some heads. I'm thinking he's kind of locking down that fourth spot. Kind of out of nowhere, really. We knew he was on the roster. We didn't know that much about him, but he's making us remember him, which I think is the key to the whole thing. Um, and on top of that, the top three guys could play probably anywhere along the three that you need them to. Um, so because of that versatility, maybe they only take five, depending on who they are. But right now, I'm gonna stick with the math at six. I think also some of your special teamers again are gonna have to come. This is one of the spots where you're gonna have some guys on the uh, on the cover teams and possibly even on the return team, depending how the dynamic kickoff return thing works out. DeMarco Jackson, Kaliki Hudson, Jalen Ford, they were like the next three on the depth chart. I would think those would be the three guys right now um, that are fighting out for what would likely be the last two spots. I don't I don't know how much they diversify in the number of spots they can play, but I think DeMarco's primarily a middle guy, so is Ford, but it looks like Ford's backing up Gay right now, so kind of hard to tell. I do know Kaliki Hudson was a very good special teamer with Washington the last couple of years, and then he had that kind of late in the season got a chance to start and put up some. He played as a top reserve to get snaps before that. Last 4, 5, 6 games, whatever it was, he played as a starter, played really, really well. So I think he's always going to be in the mix on this too. So kind of, I'm thinking six and possibly trying to sneak somebody onto the practice squad as a seventh guy, just still on the roster, but not on the 53 man. Ooh, here comes the interesting one. And again, Justin Simmons not signed right now, but if he shows up, game changer type thing on the 53. Just starting with the safeties because I kind of lumped all the defensive backs together and taking nine. I'm going to start with the safeties. Matthew Howden, Abram, and Harris. I think are in, especially since, and it's been mentioned, talked about several times that Will Harris is a veteran guy who's played everywhere in the defense backfield for Detroit. Played against some of the current coaching staff on the offensive side that coached in Minnesota and Chicago. So everybody's kind of familiar with him, what he can do, what he brings. So and they have him backing up Honey Badger free safety right now as the second teamer. Um, but his ability to play all the spots, I think unless somebody comes in and just bumps him out, he's going to be the de facto fifth safety / fifth corner because the corners, Lattimore, Debo, McKinstry, Taylor, boom. There you go. So kind of leaves you with one spot left. And Ugo Amadi is also a mostly a corner, but he last year he had to dip into the safety pool sometimes and kind of help us out there. Um, JT Gray, if it's up to Darren Rizzi, JT Gray's making this team. If you saw his interview back in OTAs and he was asked about JT Gray, and I just got the impression that when they're trying to figure out the final 53, he's literally may even throw in fists if he needs to. The old, old 1-2-1-2 to keep Gray because he great special teams. He really wants Gray, and I think with the new kickoff rules and all, he he feels like Gray is going to be important probably more than ever, just because of the uncertainty there, and that's a guy who's very good at doing stuff like that. And you got to throw Roderick Teamer in there as a possible bubble guy trying to get to that ninth spot because really of all the backups, including some on this list who we're saying is going to make it, he's the guy making noise more than a couple times with some good plays on defense, some picks. And I think he's actually listed third at free safety behind Will Harris. Third, he's running with the threes. So he may sneak in here. And I think a little of this has to do, again, if Rizzi's going to end up fighting hard for JT Gray, because I don't know how much Gray helps you anywhere else in the secondary other than special teams. I know we've had to put him out there at times. I don't think we really enjoy doing that a whole lot, and I think we'd like to avoid it. So Teamer, um, comes in and shows maybe he can take a portion of that JT Gray role and plus help out on the back end. I think he could be in the mix. A lot of the other guys, we still have a lot of safeties floating around there, but I think outside of that group, I don't think anybody's even really qualifying for the bubble right now. We'd be more than likely out if they were cutting down the 53 man today. So there you go. My best effort at a 53 man, probably way too early. A little over 24 hours from our first preseason game. But I think 40 plus more roster spots are probably pretty close to set as long as those guys remain or keep staying healthy-ish. And I think some of the spots that would normally just have a really good chance of being locked down, the question mark is they're not on the field for training camp. So you guys tell me what you think. What did I miss? What did I hit? What did I get right? What did I get wrong? You want to throw your own 53 man in there? Let's see what you got. So, but for right now, I think tomorrow night's a very important game. If you're an offensive lineman, if you're one of the healthy receivers fighting for a spot, and you're running out of time, if you're at any other position trying to really turn some heads and make some noise and get noticed, going into this week, because I really feel like this is the week that's going to decide a lot of stuff. You want to have your reps and your spot solidified as far as what's going to happen in training camp over the next 9 days. So you have a chance to win that spot on the 53 man. So what I got for today, so yeah, probably sometime Sunday with a little post game recap from tomorrow night. Remember, Jason and I will be live next Sunday night after the San Francisco game, about 10 o'clock ish Central Time. So please join us for that. I think we're going to have a whole lot of fun. So till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out. Who dat?